Hi there, I'm Nu-Trix, and today we're talking about Copperhead. It's a synthesizer plugin for the iOS from the company called 4pockets.com. If you don't know them, they've been in the world of the iOS and iPad music for a long time. They're known for different things, but I was actually pretty interested when I saw the Copperhead synth come out. From the first listen, I was interested in the sound, what it could do. So we're going to go through what this thing can do. It's very interesting and powerful. Still, it's a very, I would say, approachable synthesizer. It's easy to get to know it and use it, so it doesn't become too complex. But it has so much to offer in hidden windows. And you go, okay, there's also this, there's also that, and there's also this. So let's just go through it and you'll see how powerful this little thing is. And if it's the right thing for you, then go ahead and get your hands on it. I'm actually running it inside Zen Beats, my favorite DAW on the iPad, but it could be any DAW. It can actually run by itself as a standalone, but it was meant to be run inside a DAW. Let's go to the settings first. There's basically a one screen. You can slide up and down. And if you have it as standalone, you can see just one slice at a time, just like the VCO section, then just the filter section, and then just the sequencer section. And if you want to see everything, you press on full screen. But when you're in a DAW, by default, you're in full screen. You have these little buttons at the top, full screen, sequencer, porta slide. So these are on-off buttons, basically, that you turn on as you need. You have also a section to load the presets, okay? And there's one at the bottom called the user. So your stuff that you save is there. And in the little menu you can click on at the top left, you have things like initial patch. So you can init the patch and start from scratch, which I find very useful when you want to learn what a device can do. You have panic, so panic button to stop all the notes if there's anything wrong happening. Get settings, and there you've got a couple of cool things like the modulation wheel. If you have one like I have on my keyboard here, what do you want it to control? So do you want it to control the LFO amount, the speed for the first LFO or the second one, yes or no? And cross modulation, the oscillator mix between 1 and 2, portamento, the cutoff filter, the resonance. So you basically can assign and activate these destination for the modulation wheel, which is pretty wide and interesting. The other one, when you go back, you've got effect ordering, because there's a section here. You don't see it that much, but in the section of the output, there's a button here for effects on or off. When you click on it, you have these options here: chorus, overdrive, digital reverb, digital delay, and tremolo pan. And they'll really, I mean, they sound cool. In this window here, settings, you can change the order of these. You can say, where is the effect ordering? You can say that the multi-chorus is before the overdrive, or no, I want the gate to be before everything else. No, the gate is at the end, before the reverb or after the so you can really change the order. It doesn't change on screen, but you know that you're changing the order of the effects are in Siri, basically. And there's a gate, and as you see here, there's no gate on screen because it's another section where there's basically a gate step sequencer just for the gate, which is pretty cool again. Color scheme is just personal taste. Your basic one is orange. I decided to go with sea green, and you can also change the color of, and the not just the color, but the look of the buttons. I prefer the silver set, so it's just a question of personal taste. Then you have the maximum polyphony. You go 4, 6, 8, 12, and 16. Basically goes with the how many voices you want to play when you play these sounds. And the same logic is how capable your iPad is to play these massive sounds. So if it's not that powerful, you should go and keep the polyphony to a minimum. If it is more powerful, like in a newer iPad, then you can go up to 16 if that's what you're looking for. Sub range, so there's a sub oscillator that basically you have no control over outside of the volume of it. It's basically a sine wave. That is, you have a choice, 12 or 24 dBs under the note that you're playing. So let's keep it at 12. It was there. It's good. There's a sequencer in it. You can actually send MIDI out using it or not. So you can activate that. Polyphonic pressure, aftertouch, channel aftertouch, and channel aftertouch control. Do you want to receive them or not? Do you want it to respond to it or not? So that's where you're going to change that information. Open window, a couple little things that are interesting. You can actually activate the waveform preview. So when you play, you're going to see something happening. So some people love that. I personally find that really interesting when I sound design to see the waveform, even if it doesn't care. It doesn't really matter because, well, it's a question of understanding what you're doing, but people listening to the sound do not look at the shape. So it's really just a question of you, if you want it, it's there. That's pretty cool. And it also means that if you don't use it, you don't use CPU. So it's not like it's always on. You kind of have a choice on it, which is, I think it's a good touch for that. You also have the effects window, so the one we just turned on by pressing on it, but you can also go find it using the open window. There's the audio gate. So that's what I said, the kind of gate step sequencer for the gate. If you turn that on, you can also go the length of it. So like 16, that's the gate. And if you turn it on here. So that's, I mean, it's pretty cool. Right away, it gives life to a sound, and it's the gate. It's not a sequencer. It's not an arpeggiator. So again, you can play with that. There's a smoothness. There's a pattern length, and you can type in what you want. You can put it on hold, so it actually will stay and play it. Or if you stop it, it will just play, and it will only play when you press on it. Okay, so turn it off for now. You understand what this does. Again, pretty cool because it's part of the sound and it's saved with a patch. That's always a good thing. You have the output option, low and high shelving EQ, a pan, polyphony, we just talked about it earlier, and the limiter. We have the limiter here to turn it on or off, but this is the window where you actually decide where it's going to limit. What's the threshold for the limiter? So that's all the extra stuff that is not always obvious on the screen. Now, if you go back to the screen itself, it's fairly simple. You have the first section of the top, which is VCO1, VCO2. You've got the two VCO. That's actually going to go with init patch. And we got it. So you have one sound playing, okay? One oscillator. And then you have different shape. Actually, let's go back and open the window here. You see we have the sine wave. We have the sawtooth. Okay. Sawtooth. Sine wave. Square. And square we can change the pulse width. And you can add pulse width modulation. Always cool for that. We have triangular wave, very close to the sine wave. We have this one, which is a trapezoid, kind of a square with a shape, if you want. We have the SuperSaw, and as you bring it up, SuperSaw, remember what it is? Came out with the JP8000. I had a JP8000 in the past. There's a video here about it. And the SuperSaw is basically multiple sawtooth playing at the same time, detuned so they sound bigger and fatter. And it's kind of made to recreate the sound of the original analog synthesizer where you put a unison on, let's say, a Prophet 5 with 5 notes playing, and then they would detune because they could not be in tune perfectly anyway. And as you detune them, it becomes bigger and wider. It just creates a cool, big sound of the sawtooth, which was called the SuperSaw for Roland. And since that day, that sound was so recognized that today we still use, like the SuperSaw, and everybody kind of creates a different version of the SuperSaw. That's what we have here. So that's one oscillator, but basically it's actually 5 or 6 of them playing. And then you bring the volume of them and you can detune them. So that's a super saw. Then you get user definable. You go, what? User definable? What can I do with that? How can I define this? You actually press on it again, and then you have the internal harmonics of an oscillator. That is super cool. At least to teach, it's super cool to say, okay, this is how it works. Because if you have a sine wave, you only have the first oscillator. So the root key, the root note playing, and you see the screen, you have a second one. If I change that to, okay, I've got second partial, which is the first harmonic of the root key, and the third one, and the fourth, and the fifth, and the seventh, and the eighth. And you just bring them gradually up to a point that you have something like a sawtooth. Okay? And as you bring harmonics up and down, so this window, when you look at it, it's almost like doing additive synthesis because you can just bring the partials that you want to hear, but they're harmonics. They're all harmonics. They're related to the first one, which is exactly what you want in an instrument. You can also say, I want to have a square, but I'm going to mess it up. So now you're really tweaking the harmonics inside the oscillator. This is massively powerful. It sounds simple when you think about it, but if you look how powerful this is really all the other shapes that you don't have, you basically can draw them here. Complex waveforms, not by drawing, but by harmonic content, which is also very logical in a way, because when you draw stuff, let's say with a pen on a screen that say, okay, this is going to be my oscillator shape, you can create stuff that is full of harmonics. So very difficult to hear a note out of it. Whereas here, it's going to be harmonics because that's what you have. These are partials. They're all related together. So this is pretty cool. This is really, really fun. You go random. So we're really just at the oscillator level still. Next one is string machine. So this recreates older synthesizer when they started to create these kind of ensemble and string machines, that's how we call them at that time, to create these instruments where you could sound more like string and pads. And you've got vocal, more like vocals, and detune harmonics. You can just basically randomize it. So this is pretty cool. And we have this for both of them. So you could say my first oscillator was going to be very, standard sawtooth, and my second one will be vocal. And then you combine the two and you have this cool pad. Or I have a SuperSaw with a vocal pad, and the two creates a very, very chorus type of very big ensemble sound. So it's really a question of how you want to use it, but it just go beyond just recreating analog, traditional, subtractive synthesizer because of the user definable, the SuperSaw, and the string machine. It just opens up very wide the options that you have here. Now, between oscillator 1 and 2, they have the same shapes and options, but what you can do is you can sync them together. When you sync them, oscillator 1 is synced to the second one, which is, I find odd. Usually it's the second one synced to the first one, but in this case, oscillator 1 is now synced to the second one. So if I go like this, you see that it's always in tune, whereas if I turn it off, you hear all the different notes. And just for fun, if I assign a LFO to the pitch, just LFO1, this is the pitch going like very sick, and go sync on. So what it does now, it changes the speed that is synced, so forced to be in tune and re-triggered at the speed of oscillator 2. So okay. So VCO 1 and 2, you've got the sync as an option. Again, You can also apply this with the user-defined shape or content, the SuperSaw, or the string machine. You have a VCF, the voltage control filter. You have a cutoff, resonance. It's straightforward. You have a low pass, high pass, band pass. You've got notch filter, notch shelving, and formant for. Because I have the pitch here. Okay, so it's all a question of how you want it to sound. Then you have a ADSR envelope, ADSR filter. These are already assigned to the right destination, so they're done. I'm not sure you can reassign the envelope to something else. I don't see that by default. You have the mixer, so you have the voice, the sound of the synth, and you have the mix between the two here. But then when they're mixed together, the volume of them coming out is here. You have the noise also. Then you combine, and you have the sub. Okay. And when you go up, you have the LFO, sync to the different speed or not. The retriggering of the LFO. So every time you press a key, you want the LFO to retrig from 0. So always start at the same place. Or no, you get it where it's at. I prefer the non-retrig version, but that's my personal taste. You have 3 destination, pitch, filter, and amplitude. And you can invert the movement or not. So basic stuff, but it works. And the shape of the LFO, you have sine, sawtooth, square, triangular, random. And you can assign it to VCO1, 2, or both of them. So again, pretty standard, but a little bit more open than standard because you got a little bit more control here, for 1 and 2, and you can actually connect this or press this and become a one shot. So it only does it once, the movement. So if you activate one shot, it almost becomes like an envelope. If you one shot and retrig, it's going to start always the same place, going to open up and close with the shape that you have. It's almost an envelope at that point. So if you want an envelope that I said earlier that we don't have one here to assign to different places, well, these now can become this. But their matrix of modulation is not super complex. And I wish it was possible to click on, let's say, amp and then assign to a different one. To say, okay, I want to assign to the filter cutoff, or I want to assign to, if I change to SuperSaw, I would like to control the mix. So the mix value here, I would like to have this. But again, this can be recorded as a controller over your sequencer. So yes, I would like to, but it's not a problem because there's a way to do what I would like to do, which basically is have the mix evolve from a sawtooth to a SuperSaw as the song progresses. So, and I can do that with one MIDI controller. So not a big of a deal. Or I could do it in the sequencer. So if you go into sequencer, the last section at the bottom here, you can just draw what you have, you turn it on, and then you've got, in this case, you get this kind of sickness, sick sound playing. Okay, now what I can do here is I can actually, instead of playing the, well, I can play, of course, type in new keys. Can also say this one's going to be longer. This one's going to be like this. And it's going to be only 8 here. control how long these notes going to be. You want to be chromatic or no, I want to be Dorian. They also repeat, so you can say this one I'm going to repeat 3 times. So you can have these steps that are faster. The option that I said earlier that is kind of sad because you don't have this as an LFO to control whatever you want. No, everything is here now. If I go edit mode, then I want to edit the ring modulation. That's a cool one. Ring modulation, you have it here. I'm going to edit, patch, yes. If I take the cross modulation here and bring it up, we got cross modulation because this is cross modulation. You get ring modulation and you get FM modulation. This is the amount of LFO, actually the cross modulation coming up. Or the ring modulation, or the cross modulation. I can get lost in doing that. So that's it. I mean, it's a very complete analog type of sound you can make, but it gives you everything you expect. You've got cross modulation, you've got FM modulation, you've got ring modulation between the oscillators, but also have the extra stuff like SuperSaw, Formant to create these kind of voice type of sounds, the strings, a machine you can have, and the user, you could just program the content of your harmonics of your oscillator. Plus you have a step sequencer and a pattern sequencer that can be for notes or for controlling parts of the synthesizer. So a very complete yet not complex synth. You get around this fairly easily. It's just a cool sounding synth. Let's listen to some of the presets for the fun of it. Say bass. Very lush, very interesting. That's it. Hope this is actually useful. If you have any questions, put them below. Comments, put them below. See you soon. Make more music. Cheers.